What's up, everyone? Welcome into the Dear Miss Fantasy Show with me, your host, Tara Roberts. This is the official mailbag show for Player Profiler. It is Wednesday, April 15th. We are 1 week away from the NFL draft. 1 week and 1 day. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe that. Finally, then we will have our rookie landing spots and 10,000 things to break down. Who are we buying into? What do we love? What do we hate? How does it affect the veterans? All that good stuff. Because now we're speculating. I'm ready for the real concrete information. I'm ready for the boys to get into OTAs. I'm ready to go. And then the season is right around the corner. And drafting is going to be happening. I just got my Scott Fish Bowl invite. I will be live drafting in Houston. If you haven't applied, there might still be spots left as well. If anyone is in the Houston area and would like to do the live draft, it is so much fun. We had we did it at a brewery, Jesus. And we had 4 different leagues drafting all together. It was so much fun. It was our 3rd year doing it, or second, 3rd year, something. I don't know. Regardless, super good time. In case anyone was wanting to join in on that, look it up, Scott Fish Bowl. So I'm so excited. That means I have my first draft, full draft, redraft coming up in June. And then, of course, we have rookie drafts coming. I don't even know when those are. I'm assuming I have at least 2 that are already scheduled for sure. But one for sure I know likes to get kicked off like immediately after the draft. So I'm guessing my first rookie draft for Dynasty will be right after that. And we can talk about that and all that good stuff. So lots of fun content coming our way. So excited. We will be getting into actual redraft and rookie draft season very shortly here. But since we essentially have technically one more, we'll do one more live show next week, right before the draft, obviously on Wednesday night. Just recapping any of the last minute news that we're getting in terms of all of the rookie speculations. But for this show, my plan was for us, of course, to do Q&A. So ask any questions that you have, but to go back through all of the potential rookie landing spots and, figure out what is the best, what is the worst, what are the red flag situations for us to fall into, because we've been talking about the veterans, and I want to get us back onto the rookie track. And last week we talked about all of the top 30 visits, trying to figure out where these guys are potentially going to be landing here. And now let's actually talk about the good and the bad of these locations. So we'll get us started off here. Also, shout out to the chat as well. We already got some comments in there. Shout out to Just Lift D1W. Shout out to Pronto Joey. And let's go ahead and go. Let's start off with running backs, because obviously running backs are the most interesting landing spots because of the massive immediate impact that they can make. And because we have multiple real true RB1 locations opening up here. And obviously when we're looking at rookies, it's kind of a weird draft class, right? Because we've been blessed for several years now to have, and even back when, because we went through a time period, like the Breece Hall year, I think was one where we didn't have any, I think where we didn't have, we had maybe 1 or 2 years where we didn't have any first round running backs. And, but we had multiple second round running backs kind of back to back there. And for a couple of years now, we have been blessed with these multiple first round running backs here where we get the drama, right? We get the Bijan and the Gibbs. We get the not Jeremiah Love. We get the Ashton Genty and the Amari and Hampton of it all. And then a lot of second round picks. And this is kind of a funny one because it's an interesting draft class because the gap between Jeremiah Love and everybody else is just so aggressive. But we do have a lot of very solid locations for landing spots. And oddly enough, the Jeremiah Love is going to a team that does not have a clear RB1 need. And I say going to, we don't know 100% right now, but the vast majority of mock drafts have the Titans taking Jeremiah Love. It makes sense. And I think we talked about this last week, and I have in a couple of videos. When it comes to rookie predictions at running backs, those tend to be very, very, very sticky. Just because if someone's talent at running back warrants a top 10 pick, it's really difficult to whiff on that for all of the scouts and all of the insiders and whatnot. So there's so much smoke around Jeremiah Love going to Tennessee. And at the very least, we kind of have like a stop point to where I do not foresee him making it past Washington. That to me, if he made it past Tennessee and past the Giants, it would be Washington that would be the fail-safe stop right there, because I've seen a lot of comments of people saying, oh, it could be Cincinnati. I think that apparently they're very interested, but they would probably have to trade up and bypass some teams in order for it to get to that point because of their pick. It's not being high enough. Odds of Jeremiah Love making it out of the top 10, slim there. So realistically, we're looking at teams that have these wide open spots. Minnesota is obviously a big one here. We've got Aaron Jones and we've got Jordan Mason on roster. But at the end of the day, and some of that was not their fault, like the offense as a whole was ineffective last year, but they were also not the most inspiring committee last year. Like if we were to, make comparisons of committees, right? Let's look at a Chicago and the work that DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai combined. That was an inspiring committee. That was enjoyable from a fantasy perspective. This was not an enjoyable experience with Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones. And Aaron Jones did briefly have a time period where he was out. Jordan Mason had the opportunity to operate as a 3-down back. He did not do that very well, unfortunately. He's fine on the ground, but at this point, to expect him to ascend to a strong RB1 role is just very slim. For Minnesota's sake, I think that dipping into the draft and grabbing one of these guys who can operate as a 3-down back makes the most sense for them. And that is a popular pick to mock to them as well. So Minnesota is one of the premier landing spots. The quarterback situation does make it a little bit shaky, right? But at the end of the day, the problem is that regardless of the quarterback situation and the fact that Kyler Murray does run, he doesn't run at such an egregious rate that it would necessarily knock the lead back down significantly there. So still a strong landing spot. Going to jump to the comments here because I'm seeing some running back comments. Pronto Joey says, I'm scared for RJ Harvey. That is a very critical one. The Broncos, unfortunately, might be a very, the Broncos are a bad landing spot in general. I am terrified for anyone to land with them because we've seen, like, if we're looking at potential visits here and rumors that we have heard in terms of what they were looking for in free agency, there's legitimate reason to be scared for Harvey here. J.K. Dobbins coming back was obviously not the best thing in the world. We know exactly what to expect, and I would expect them to repeat that committee. The problem is that I do think there's a strong and they did bring back Jaleel McLaughlin as well. But I think there's a possibility that they are going to dip into the draft and grab another running back as well. And if they do that, then we run into the problem of, okay, we start off the season with J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey in the split that they had last year, where Dobbins was early down and goal line. And then, R.J. Harvey was very involved in the red zone, oddly enough, especially from a pass perspective, and did have receiving touchdowns, but just did not get those goal line carries. So upside high for Harvey, super low floor, very inconsistent there. And then ceiling, very mediocre for J.K. Dobbins. So you don't really want to touch either one of these guys. And you're waiting for R.J. Harvey to get that 3-down role once J.K. Dobbins inevitably does not make it through the season. But if Sean Payton does add another running back in the draft, that's a legitimate problem, which means that even if J.K. Dobbins does go down, we may never get to that point where R.J. Harvey is the clear 3-down back. It seems like maybe that is just not in the cards for him with Sean Payton. And that is very typical of Sean Payton, unfortunately, there. So, and we've seen it work, obviously, in New Orleans, where using multiple backs was not a major issue because of the extreme upside, that Alvin Kamara had there. But the pass game here is so interesting with the Broncos as well, because they're very balanced. They have a lot of weapons through the air. They might even be adding another weapon in the draft. You never know. Although they were taking top 30 visits from wide receivers and then kind of canceled a couple after they did the trade for Jalen Waddle. So my gut tells me no. But they are also potentially a favorite for drafting a tight end. Eli Stowers seems to be a potential target for them. I hate that because I love Stowers as a prospect. And I would like for him to go anywhere else where he could be a potential true tight end one in first one or two or even three. Three is not ideal, but top three look in terms of the pass game there. And that's just not going to happen in Denver. We talk so much about like the Joker role for Sean Payton. That's what he wants. But at some point, we look at that offense and say, you got two viable running backs. You're 3-4 deep at wide receiver, maybe 5 deep at wide receiver, honestly. Then you add a tight end in there. You have not had consistent tight end usage. And you could say, well, it's because, they were ineffective. No, I just don't. There's only so much volume and so much offense you can have. So yeah, skip ahead on that one. Terrible landing spot. If we have one of these high-end tight ends go to the Broncos, God, from a fantasy perspective, I tried not to panic, right? Because you look at a Colston Loveland and say he was drafted into a objectively crowded offense with an existing tight end in Cole Kmet in contract, right? DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Luther Burden was drafted as well. It was a crowded room, but you were betting on the talent, saying Colston Loveland is a guy that can just push through it all and still thrive from a fantasy perspective based off talent. You'll want to say the same thing about, if a Kenyon Sadiq, Eli Stowers, Justin Jolie were to land in Denver. But unfortunately, it's really tough to get around that. So I hate Denver as a landing spot in general for the potential of them adding a running back, for the potential of them adding a tight end. They're just going to make things messier and messier from a fantasy perspective. And no negative towards the Broncos. That's fantastic for them. It's great for Bo Nix. It's going to help them push for a Super Bowl. But just from a fantasy perspective, it's a complete mess and wholly undesirable for us, unfortunately. I hate that. I really, really do. Apparently, there was no good option for us last year. If you did not get Ashton Genty and you were looking at like, okay, am I getting RJ Harvey or am I getting Travion Henderson? It didn't really matter because neither one of them was destined to actually be a true starter. So joke's on us for that one as we debated which one was the preferred running back, unfortunately. Yeah, I have a video that's actually going to drop Friday that talks about RJ Harvey and whether or not we believe that he can ascend in the Patriots offense this year. Can he surpass Ramondre Stevenson? So look out for that one on my YouTube channel. This one right here from Pronto Joey. He'll be good for, he'll be good for Cam Ward overall too. And that is the Jeremiah Love landing there as well. I think so. I mean, ideally, I would love, like, selfishly, and when I say selfishly, just like from a selfishly for Cam Ward, right? Just because when we look at that receiving core, I want a Carnell Tate added to that receiving core. It would round it out. Calvin Ridley is not it, right? Unfortunately, he's too old at this point, unfortunately, and they need a very clear, strong wide receiver one, and they just don't have that on the roster. But again, we like a lot of wide receivers in this draft class. So actually, from a fantasy perspective, that'll make it very interesting for us because we'll have the ability for, let's say that they, take Jeremiah Love in round one, and then they turn around with their second pick and take there's a wide variety of guys that could be available there. There's Casey Concepcion. I don't know that would be the fit for them really. Perhaps Omar Cooper Jr. something, right? That fits as a potential true wide receiver one. They're not that Casey Concepcion can't be a wide receiver one. Just with the other wide receivers in that offense, I don't love the fit. Love him anywhere else, right? But that does make it interesting from a fantasy perspective because we might end up with one of those second round wide receivers having really good value at Tennessee because while I love Chimere Dike, Alec Ayamanar, yeah, fantastic, right? But not true wide receiver ones. And whoever they draft could immediately ascend there. So all things are pointing up, quite frankly, for Cam Ward in general. He's going to get at the very least one weapon, probably two, maybe even three added there. There's a possibility they take a tight end as well. Although Brian Dable did get Daniel Bellinger. They have Gunnar Helm on roster. So maybe they make it work with what they have there. But weapons are going to be added. New offensive coordinator is obviously an upgrade for them. Maybe get things straight on defense with Robert Saleh leading the way. So things pointing up in a positive direction. I like him a lot. Showed a little bit of rushing upside, right? He's mobile, not obviously not the same legs as some of our other guys, but positive things ahead for him. So we are feeling good about the direction for Tennessee and Cam Ward for sure. This is a good one here from Michael Oben. Says, I am all in on Bill. It's funny because I was anti-Bill last year, but if he makes it through the draft well, first of all, obviously, if Jeremiah Love doesn't make it to them and they don't take him, and depending on what kind of running back, because I do speculate they will add a running back, but depending on the round and what kind of running back they add, I think there's a lot of potential for him as well. So I kind of like him. I think that free agency and everything worked out for him as long as he can escape the draft without them adding an RB1 to the roster. I think he's very interesting for this fantasy season, right? Because Washington is a good landing spot for a running back. They've operated as a committee, and they've done so through multiple offensive coordinators. It's just been like the vision of this Washington team for a while now. But they are making change. Obviously, they've got changes at offensive coordinator. They brought in Rachaad White, which does scream committee, obviously, with him and Bill. But at the end of the day, when we're looking at him, Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt, compared to Rachaad White, night and day in terms of Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt being far more effective on the ground, right? So there is no way that Rachaad White would upend and take a 3-down role there, just because we know for a fact he's strong pass blocker, very solid as a receiving option as well, but just not effective on the ground. And we've seen this through multiple iterations of the Tampa Bay offense at this point. And for all the faults of Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt not being a good pass blocker, he was excellent on the ground there. So especially if we get him combined with Jaden Daniels back there, which would open things up in terms of lanes and opportunities for Bill as well. So it'll be very interesting if he can make it through the draft. Very interesting in terms of anybody that wants to. I don't know how comfortable I would be in terms of going like true zero RB and relying on him just because the pass catching upside won't be there, but there will be good value on him regardless. Nice RB2 there. From Just Lift D1W Vikings, I can definitely see picking Love, but they would have to move up top 10 ahead the Cowboys. They would have to move up a lot. I don't know if they would do it. It would be a great fit for sure. I just don't know if they would make that level of a jump there. But at the end of the day, like we've seen, teams will make a jump for elite talent. So you never know. From JP hey Tara, always excited to tune in. As always, excited for the draft, especially the Panthers. Worried for my boy Jalen Coker. Lots of strong links to us drafting Cooper or Concepcion. Yeah, I agree. And then also, everybody and their mother is drafting or is mock drafting Kenyon Sadiq at the Panthers pick to them, which I don't think is going to happen. I could be wrong, right? But I don't love that as a fit, just because looking at Dave Canales, not just in what he has done in Carolina, but back in Tampa Bay, the tight end position, and you can argue like it's a personnel thing. I don't think it's a personnel thing. I think his offense just has not and will not have a tight end be one of the top 3 looks. I just think that that's the case. And maybe arguably if you get elite talent in there, it could change. But I don't think that's the function of his offense specifically. But yeah, if I'm looking between the two, if Casey Concepcion in Carolina would make me high-key concerned for Jalen Coker. Now, Concepcion doesn't have to be in the slot, right? I feel like we're very tied to Jalen Coker in the slot, and we feel good about that. Casey Concepcion is very versatile. So is Coker, but Casey Concepcion, very versatile. So for sure, could play in a wide variety of locations. Between the two, I would prefer Omar Cooper. If they're going to draft a wide receiver, I would prefer Omar Cooper Jr. to be the one that they draft, just because I think that's more of a clear, direct replacement for Xavier Legette. And I can get on board with that one. It would make me a lot less nervous. probably might affect in terms of just roles. If it were Cooper, probably more so our threat would be, is he going to take away some red zone looks from Tetero McMillan? That would be my concern. Or, maybe he plays big slot or something but at the end of the day, yeah, there is some concern about additional pass catcher being added in for the Panthers offense that we have to worry about. So I too am worried about that one because I love Jalen Coker. He will 100% regardless. Got to stay with the brand here. He will 100% be one of my favorite late round picks, but that's the beauty, right? At no point this season or this draft season are we going to see this off season, draft season, are we going to see people start shooting Jalen Coker up into like, oh, we're going to draft Jalen Coker in the 9th round, the 8th round, 7th round. No, it's not going to happen. So he's still going to be late round value for us. It's just a matter of whether or not there's the threat in there. So yes, this one is one that I am worried about as well. From Michael Aubin, I find San Francisco an interesting landing spot for a rookie running back. I do too. And we've seen, and we have, it's very, San Francisco in general, right? Very interesting for a wide variety of positions, literally every position but quarterback, right? Since they're not letting Mac Jones go, apparently. So when we're looking at San Francisco, really they're an optimal landing spot for a wide variety of teams. It doesn't seem like they are going to go this route, but I would find them to be a very interesting spot for a tight end landing spot as well, just preparing for the future of George Kittle. Obviously, he's, 32, I believe. I don't know when his birthday is. I can't remember. But 32, Achilles injury, that's not a good combination. They did retain, oh no, why is his name escaping me? Oh, now I need to look up San Francisco depth chart. Sorry, guys. Jake Tonjes. That's right. Jake Tonjes. They did retain Jake Tonjes, so that is good. No issue there. But at the end of the day, is Tonjes going to be their future? Or do they want to invest into what is a very deep draft class at tight end? That would be very interesting for me. We've got a lot of smoke around them being a landing spot for a wide receiver. I think that one is absolutely happening. It's just a matter of where they're going to do it. I would not put it past them to use a first round pick on a wide receiver, especially because of the guys they've been bringing in. Does make me fearful, unfortunately. Like if they were to bring in a first round wide receiver, would make me very fearful of those Ricky Pearsall shares, right? Because he hasn't established himself like as a true wide receiver one in any capacity because he has not been on the field long enough to make any kind of establishment whatsoever. So I was really excited to see him alongside Mike Evans and thinking that hopefully he could get that Emeka Egbuka treatment that we saw in Tampa Bay of when Mike Evans is on the field, your top guy, your top corner is 100% going to be on Mike Evans. It's no question, right? Because he is better than, it doesn't matter what age, whatever, as long as he's healthy on the field, he is the best receiver. So the coverage that he dictates just opens things up for everybody else. So I was really excited and still am really excited to see Mike Evans and how he opens things up in this offense for these other receivers. But I think there's going to be a new one in there. It'll be very interesting to see who they add here. It'll tell us a lot about how they want to position this receiving core moving forward for the future. But for a rookie running back, it is also very interesting as well. I agree with you on that one, Michael, because we've seen San Francisco. How do I phrase this? Sometimes it's very hit or miss, right? I mean, Kyle Shanahan will draft a guy at a reasonable draft pick, and it's like a weird fit, right? You're like, that doesn't really make logical sense for the type of running back you like, and inevitably it does not work out, right? And then he'll draft a guy in the 6th round that is more of his type, and that is the guy that ends up moving forward and being the potential handcuff for, potential handcuff for the RB1 inevitably going down, as we have seen even before Christian McCaffrey got there, right? So young rookie running backs are always in play for San Francisco. It's just always figuring out if it's going to be one that hits or completely whiffs, right? It's really annoying. I forget the name of the one that they drafted like in the 2nd round and just had zero usage. I think it was a running back out of LSU and zero usage for him. But there's a lot of options there for whoever lands there. And obviously when we're looking at Christian McCaffrey. And I always hesitate. It's hard with Christian McCaffrey, right? Because we know and we have seen multiple times when there is a really aggressive workload that often that comes with a regression year, right, for him. And the workload was insane last season. Let's see how quickly I can pull it up. It was really egregious amount of carries that made no logical. Well, they didn't have any other weapons, so I guess they kind of had to. But he had 311 311 carries last year and 102 receptions. That's well for over 400 touches. I mean, as I'm kind of going back through the years, that's the first time he has ever crossed over 300 carries. There were 100, he's crossed over 100 receptions before, but that combination there, getting him over 400 carries, I think it's only happened one other time from what I can see in 2019, if my math is correct. And he did, in fact, only make it through 3 games in that season. So yeah, it is concerning. And you hate to fade Christian McCaffrey in any capacity because of the massive upside that he offers. But at the end of the day, it's very tough to envision him like making it through this season, right? At his age and coming off of that workload. So yeah, it feels like we're in a regression situation more than likely. And the potential there for a young rookie running back to come in. And as we know with San Francisco, it doesn't have to be a day 2 guy. It can be a day 3 guy. It can be a 7th round pick. Like it can 100% be the one that fits the best and takes over. So yeah, that is 100% one to keep our eye on because that is a very sneaky, great landing spot for some of these later round guys for sure. So I love that comment there, Michael. Thank you. Just lift D1W said Harvey had some good game, 3 touchdown games for sure. Yeah, he's got a super high ceiling. It's just going to be super touchdown dependent as long as J.K. Dobbins is healthy. Pronto Joey says, hopefully Seattle gets one of these solid running backs, maybe Price. Yeah, I feel like it's going to be either Jadarian Price or Mike Washington Jr. I feel like those are the two that make the most logical sense for them. And I like just they're in that offense, behind that offensive line with so aggressively how like run heavy it is. That's obviously going to be a massive target for us. Day 2 makes sense. Obviously, we're not getting day 1 because that would be Jeremiah Love. And I don't think that they would obviously yeah, we're looking at their pick day 2 later, right? But at the end of the day, they can trade if they really feel like they're going to get sniped on whatever running back they want and move up a little bit in round 2. But they should be able to, with that round 2 pick, get a pretty good option there. So, and I don't think they have multiple round 2 picks. I don't believe. I think it's just the one. But that is literally one of the premier landing spots there for sure, because we have to remember that Zach Charbonnet is a free agent in 2027. And he will come in. There is the possibility that Seattle could keep him because he will come in a lot cheaper than Kenneth Walker. At the end of the day, they could not retain Kenneth Walker because they were not paying that level of money to a running back when they had Jackson Smith and Jigba and everybody to have to pay. But Zach Charbonnet will come in considerably lower, probably more so on the so Javonte Williams got 8. I would say even lower than that, quite frankly. So probably reasonable price there. So he could stay, but very strong possibility that whatever rookie lands in Seattle ends up being the running back of the future there. So that is probably one of the premier landing spots. Probably like right neck and neck there with Minnesota. The only difference is that we do know that at the very least, Kevin O'Connell, if he has the right personnel, will use a 3-down back. He just hasn't had it, unfortunately, over the past couple of seasons there. And in Seattle, system obviously will be adjusting, right, with Mike McDaniel leaving. But even prior to Mike McDaniel coming and being the offensive coordinator there, it did seem like they just as a concept as a whole, they like utilizing multiple running backs, and they are extremely run heavy. So it's kind of necessary for them. From Henry Odom, what round are we expecting Jeremiah Love to go in redraft this year? Is this another Genty trap like his rookie year? Yeah. Yes, it might be. I don't know if, and the thing is that Tennessee's offensive line is not as bad as the Raiders was. It's not, well, honestly, not even that much of an issue, right? Um, Definitely can improve, right? But not as destitute as the Raiders was for sure. The Raiders played such a massive issue in terms of the lack of upside, the offensive efficiency issues that we saw from Ashton Genty last year. So Love wouldn't go into as destitute a situation. Cam Ward is, coaching situation would be better. No offense to Pete Carroll, but I mean the offensive coordinator, everything was just a complete disaster there from a coaching perspective. So better situation, not as destitute, not as risky as it was with Ashton Genty last year. That one was, I had just in redraft just one share of Ashton Genty last year, and that was in a very shallow league where it just took the risk. But last year I was trying to avoid that one. I won't be as apprehensive with Jeremiah Love, but we are going to pay a hefty price. Right now, I have him going. Where you at, Jeremiah Love? It's not that easy to see. So right now, I have him in round 3. I am definitely lower than consensus and being more apprehensive there. In draft rankings right now, he is borderline round 2, round 3. So not as bad. He's RB12 right now in consensus rankings. A lot more reasonable. I don't think, even if, especially because the Tennessee landing spot should help us out there in terms of people just not wanting to mess with that. Even if, because my assumption here would be is if they draft Jeremiah Love, they will cut Tony Pollard or find a trade partner. I think they might be able to find a trade partner, but his contract probably doesn't make a lot of sense for people to trade for. So they might end up just cutting him just because financially it doesn't make sense to keep him on the roster. He costs $9 million if he stays on the roster, only $2 million if they cut him. Very reasonable dead cap. And they have Tajay Spears in contract. So logically, I do think that we would probably see Tony Pollard exit. So I don't think we'd have any worries about committees or existing running backs or anything. And the price is coming in a lot better. It could raise up a little bit for sure. I could see him, especially because there's obviously a lot of smoke around Cincinnati taking your running back, even if it's not Jeremiah Love, right? You think that maybe they're taking one day 2 or day 2, probably. So I could see him maybe moving up to a mid-second round pick at the highest. But I think late second round makes the most sense in terms of the ceiling that we'll see him at. So I think it'll be a lot safer than what we saw last year with Ashton Genty. So won't be a void in the way that it was last year. Thank goodness for that one. We get burned on rookie running backs, and then we reset, and then we forget and get all excited. So this will be a rebound year for us to be a little more apprehensive and get a reasonable ADP. I'm perfectly fine with taking him at the 2-3 turn. That feels good. But again, I'm just a little bit lower, a little bit more cautious, a little bit apprehensive. So like late 3rd round makes the most sense to me, logically. In the chat, hello to Ride Some Waves. How are you doing? To Michael Alban says I pronounced the last name properly. Hopefully I did it again. Hopefully for sure. Pronto J said I draft way too much of JCM. It might work out this year. Shout out to Dr. Sun88 in chat, said first time tuning in to the live show. Love the analysis. Thank you so much, Dr. Sun. Appreciate you. Ooh, interesting one. We got another rookie landing spot suggestion in the chat here from Michael Alban. Emmett Johnson to the Vikings or Cowboys, please. Vikings for sure on that one. I sincerely want any of our potential 3-down backs, right? Our bigger guys. I want those to avoid going to the Cowboys just because I do think that from everything Jerry Jones, I make fun of Jerry Jones a lot and the Cowboys a lot, right? Because it's very easy to make fun of Jerry Jones. But for what it's worth, his words while they are odd, when he does say something, he tends to be pretty sticky on what he says in terms of his feelings towards players, right? And they seem to be very fond of Javonte Williams. So I fear that any running back that is drafted into that situation, and there's a strong possibility, well, it'll be interesting because they have a lot of young guys on roster that did not get a chance to really showcase anything last year. I was not really one that was feeling like Jaden Blue was going to be anything. My boy Phil Maffa is there, but again, he's not real. He's a very big back, but I don't know if I ever see him as a RB1 in any capacity or really a direct backup running back. So adding another running back does make sense for them, but I would not love it as a landing spot just because I do think that the preference there is to lead with Javonte Williams for sure. Let's talk wide receivers from Just Lift D1W. A lot of great wide receivers out there. Tyson, obviously, one of them. The wide receiver location landing spots are going to be very, very intriguing this year. Because we've got some very interesting ones, right? And, go with me on it, P. We already talked about Tennessee, right? I do like Tennessee as a lead wide receiver landing spot. Unfortunately, if they take Jeremiah Love, obviously it's going to be one of our guys in the second round, right? Which does make it interesting because we could get a day 2 pick, potentially ascending into a clear wide receiver 1 situation, maybe. So it'd be very interesting. I still think that New England, for all of the craziness that is going on and all the rumors and the AJ Brown stuff and whatnot, whatever they feel about the trade potential there, it's clearly not happening right now and not during the draft, I don't think. So, which is weird, right? I don't think it's happening. I don't think it's happening. Which leads me to believe that New England will draft a receiver. Romeo Doubs, who obviously I'm a Packers fan, so I do love him. I don't know if if he remains if they don't make any major additions and he remains the wide receiver 1, I'm in. Cool. We'll have great value on him. I worry that they will not want to simply move forward with him and Kayshon Boutte, Matt Collins and whatnot, Kyle Williams, right? They want to add another body there clearly if they're interested in AJ Brown. So, you get a little bit worried that they might add another wide receiver, and it would be a good landing spot if someone were to take over as the clear wide receiver 1, right? It just becomes a situation of having a lot of bodies now, unfortunately. But there is room for a lot more volume in that New England offense. There was not a ton of pass volume, right? Drake May was operating off of efficiency, so there's a much higher ceiling there for that receiving core if they push more pass volume there, actually. Talked about Tennessee. Miami is the other one that I am very excited about for the potential landing spot there. And that's one that looks like it'll be either Mekhi Lemon or Jordan Tyson. And I like both. I think both could fit very well. I can envision both. I would be 100% in on both as the wide receiver 1 in that location. You're going into a situation where you have no competition. The downside that people will say is obviously a lack of pass volume there. Malik Willis is not going to be a high pass volume guy, probably will operate more off of efficiency. And then we know he will run a good 4 to 8 times a game, right? At the very least, right? 4 is lowballing it there. He will run quite frequently. So, and they've got Devon Achane. There should be plenty of checkdowns to Devon Achane as well. So not a massive amount of pass volume, but a massive void of pass catchers, right? So whoever comes in there can easily garner 100 plus targets right off the bat there. So premier landing spot for sure. We talked about San Francisco. Year 1 would not be ideal, but long-term from a dynasty perspective would be a good investment there for us. Obviously, Vegas needs a wide receiver 1. What pushes it a little bit down further is the fact that, unfortunately, Brock Bowers is the first look in that offense. I don't know. I mean, we do have change of offensive vision, right? But at the end of the day, I do think he is the first look in that offense. So there's a capped limit there. And obviously, whoever they take would be a second round pick there. So we're not going to get, a premier wide receiver added there. Washington is another team that will be adding a wide receiver. They have been looking at some higher end receivers as well to put alongside Terry McLaurin there. So that'll be an interesting one. You go in with Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, wide receiver one for sure there, but he is older, right? So long-term implications are very good for whoever potentially lands there. And obviously Terry plays a very specific role. So never really a massive volume guy, right? So there's room for somebody to be more of a high volume possession receiver there. So I like Washington as a landing spot for wide receivers. Buffalo is our nightmare wide receiver location. Buffalo is our nightmare location in terms of somebody being added. And it seems like, I mean, everybody is mocking a wide receiver to them with their first round pick. It makes sense. Obviously, they added DJ Moore. We expect whoever they draft to be a replacement for Keon Coleman. But at the end of the day, you're talking about an offense that has Josh Allen running significantly, has James Cook running significantly, has DJ Moore, has Khalil Shakir, has Dalton Kincaid. It's just a mess, right? So whoever gets added into there, unfortunately, will be a wide receiver that we probably love in a location that is not going to yield massive fantasy upside for us. Cleveland, obviously, the favorite for potentially taking Carnell Tate. They're also a trade candidate as well, so that might not be the wide receiver that they end up taking for sure. They may trade back and go with another option for sure. Is their team that obviously needs to build up some draft capital as well to really turn things around there. So, but if it's Carnell Tate, he would obviously immediately send into the wide receiver one position. And, if it were, Mekhi Lemon, Jordan Tyson, Casey Concepcion, Umar Cooper Jr., I mean, there's wide variety of guys, right, that would probably ascend into the wide receiver one spot over Jerry Jeudy at that point. We just got to figure out the quarterback situation. New Orleans will be drafting a wide receiver opposite of Chris Olave. Just depends on which location they'll be drafting, whether it would be taking with the first round pick. They seem right now more slated to take a defensive option there and then wait till day 2 to take a wide receiver, which would be good for us from a fantasy perspective. So there's no massive confusion there, but they have a massive gap, right? In terms of the only pass catchers they have in that offense are Chris Olave and Juwan Johnson, right? They don't have a wide receiver 2 or 3 at this point. So pretty critical that they add in a wide receiver. And so not because there's plenty of targets left to go around, not a massive issue for us worrying about Chris Olave. Would just obviously bump down Juwan Johnson a little bit because he was thriving based off volume and being the second look there. Giants, another location to add a potential wide receiver there. Again, you've got Malik Neighbors to deal with. We did have the addition of Darnell Mooney and Isaiah Likely, so I'm excited to see those two guys there. But again, we've talked about this before. I'm not excited for Matt Nagy, so not in an ideal location. And then the Jets are very, very commonly mocked to get a wide receiver in the first. Obviously, the quarterback situation is not good. Probably tanking. And they're also probably looking at a potentially a secondary quarterback option as well and a rookie addition as well. So it's just a messy situation. You're clearly not going to be the wide receiver one there with Garrett Wilson. So not an ideal spot there. Let me jump to the comments and see here as well. From Michael Aubin, rookie tight end to the Ravens. I can get on board with that for sure. Because at this point, it feels like, nobody is written, myself included. We have the exit of Isaiah Likely, but none of us are moving up Mark Andrews in rankings. And we had that smoke of them potentially adding David Njoku, right? But a rookie tight end would make a lot of sense there. It just doesn't feel like Mark Andrews has that step within him right now. I've got, dynasty leagues where people are trying to pedal off or pawn off Mark Andrews right now. That is not a buy candidate for me in any way, shape, or form. If a rookie were to land with the Ravens, I would feel very positively about that. Obviously, they got the change in offensive vision, team vision as a whole, and offensive vision, right? But at the end of the day, it would be interesting. They'd probably be top 3 look there, but it seems like their most likely add is a wide receiver. They seem very interested in multiple options there. Adding another body, like, I don't think Rashad Bateman is it, right? The veteran wide receiver way that they've been trying to go is not working. So they seem like a very good candidate to add in an additional wide receiver. It'll be very interesting to see what kind of skill set they play. I would assume a nice bigger bodied wide receiver to play off of Zay Flowers there. So yeah, if they can, but hey, maybe keeping that same vision and going with a tight end is one of the first 2 looks potentially. JPT nervously excited for Jonathan Brooks. Team GM Dan Morgan said yesterday he is looking phenomenal so far. So I think I talked about this sorry, dog is now distracting me. I think I talked about this one maybe in a previous show, but definitely in a video though. I like the potential of Jonathan Brooks this season as one that we draft and stash and just see, because the Panthers have shown that they will snatch that job away from a lead running back. So I don't feel comfortable in any way, shape, or form drafting Chuba Hubbard this year. And it's also possible they could, add a running back via the draft as well. But giving Jonathan Brooks a chance, if he is healthy, makes a ton of sense. They spent good draft capital on him. You would want to get him on the field and see what he can actually do. And if he could stay healthy, that would be fantastic. So yeah, that's a very, very, and nervously excited is the best way to describe it. If he can stay healthy, there is the possibility of him snatching that job away from Chuba, because Rico snatched it away for a second there. Ironically, he did for a little bit there. He did snatch that job away. Chuba snatched the job away from Miles Sanders. They're just snatching over there, and they have no loyalty at running back. Anybody can start anybody. Michael Allman says we've seen Christian get hurt a few times, and after the type of season he's had, for sure. Very interesting one. And then JPTA followed it up with Shanahan rarely plays rookies in year 1, especially RBs. I do like Jordan James a lot, though. He does not unless he's forced, and he might have to there, because they're so cursed that you do end up getting on down the line, unfortunately. Michael Albin says, is Scadaboo at risk? This is a good one. Harbaugh might want a 2-headed monster back there. So this one is interesting because obviously the Giants did look at Jeremiah Love. So we were thinking if potentially Jeremiah Love did make it past the Titans, that maybe the Giants would take him. But I think that would be more of like this talent is amazing, we can't pass it up situation, more so than, man, we desperately need an RB1. We're drafting somebody, second, when we get to our second round pick, we're drafting, or we're going to trade up, we're going to do something to get a running back. I think that they'll take someone, but we do got to remember wait, I'm just going to verify. I can't remember. Tyrone Tracy Jr. is in contract. Tyrone Tracy Jr. contract is, well, when is that through? That's through 2027. I thought it was just this year. Psych. That is through. Okay, so Tyrone Tracy Jr. is tied there for, man, it's interesting. I feel like he's been around a lot longer than that. But no, he's tied through. He is only on the 3rd year of his contract, so he's tied there through next year as well. So that's interesting. Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. But the fact that they have 2 young guys in contract, I don't know if they would add another if it's not a high-end talent. So I feel like if he does not get Jeremiah loved, we should be okay with Scadaboo. But again, this is a new regime. It's, Harbaugh, Matt Nagy. We don't know for sure what the preference will be. But I would assume that that the preference there would be Scadaboo as the lead back. Just Lift, D1W, Seahawks, second round running backs. I can see for sure. Yeah. And they've hit. They keep hitting. The Seahawks, one of the things I always give them in terms of credit is that they are truly excellent at the management, the front office is just excellent. Not only at knowing when to move on from aging assets, but also the scouting process is excellent there. So that's one kudos I'll always give them. Let me catch up to these comments as well here. Michael Alban in Dynasty, Love is a top 3 or 4 running back. Yeah, and again, I don't hate the Tennessee landing spot because again, Tony Pollard will be gone. Doesn't make logical sense to keep him on roster there. We can feel a certain type of way about Tennessee as a whole, but Cam Ward showed promise last season. Like it wasn't a mess for it not being a good situation, not the greatest offensive line, not the most ideal set of weapons, not a good coaching situation, losing your head coach middle of the season. He showed well, and he was remarkably better the back half of the season too there. So I think the talent there with him is real. It will shine through. It's not a bad team situation there. So I don't mind it as a landing spot there for Love, especially if the value there stays for us. So yeah, for sure. Especially this year's draft with rookie drafts, with there being such a disparity at the incoming rookies between him and the other guys. So yeah, for sure. Just Lift D1W says Jordan Tyson, best wide receiver in the draft. I think so too. I like him a lot. And I understand the flack that they're giving him, particularly Daniel Jeremiah, for the injuries that he has had nagging. But at the end of the day, nagging injuries, we've seen them. Like Jackson Smith-Njigba had injury issues. Like talent is talent, right? So you got to look past that, right? And at the end of the day, like from that school as well, we've been hitting on the wide receivers, right? So I trust it. They have been pumping out the wide receivers for sure. From VJ Sims Jones. Oh, love you. And the show is awesome. Great takes. Thank you. Question: who are your favorite day 2 and day 3 wide receivers? Ooh, yes. I like Jacoby Lane a lot. That's one of my favorites there. I like Jacoby Lane a lot. It'll be very interesting to see where he lands. I think he showed some interest, some pretty decent speed there because he's getting a lot of flack for potentially like comps were feeling Keon Coleman-ish. But he did show good movement and good speed there. So I felt a lot better about him after that. That's one of my favorite ones for sure. And then obviously, and I don't know, because it feels like Casey Concepcion has been getting pushed up to less of a day 2 and more of a day 1. But Casey Concepcion is obviously one of my favorites for sure there that I like a lot. And then other guys do I have my list? No, I don't have my list. I don't know how quickly I can get to it. I'm sorry, but those are the 2 that I can think of off the top of my head that are my top 2 favorites on that one. But appreciate the comment. Thank you so much. Michael Alban, who is getting AJ, is a rookie wide receiver in Philly going to be relevant. If they drafted see, that's the thing is that I don't feel like they would draft it seems like the rumors say that there is not going to be a draft day trade or a pre-draft trade, right? So if they're not doing that, then them drafting a rookie would be, but if it were day 2, that wouldn't be a big issue or make it a big issue because that day 2 could stay and exist even with AJ Brown staying on the team and Devontae Smith, kind of similar to what Detroit did with taking Isaac Tesla, who arguably should have gone somewhere else where he could have been a regular starter and obviously would have had massive upside. But I could see Philadelphia diving deep and making sure that they are 3 deep at receiver and still keeping AJ. My gut tells me AJ's not going anywhere. That's what my gut is telling me. I know it feels weird because they have been adding receivers and stocking up on receivers. But at the end of the day, like if you think about it, like they would have to add a rookie receiver because going in there and saying my starting receivers are Devontae Smith, Hollywood Brown, and Dontavian Wicks. And that's no offense to Devontae Smith, 100% love him. But the other 2 in there, they don't make up an AJ Brown. So, yeah, I think there's going to be a rookie receiver drafted, but more of a late day 2, maybe day 3 option there. because it just doesn't sound like there's going to be a trade happening. So it's just such a weird situation. Such a weird situation. I just don't think it's happening. I know we think that it could be post-June, but ideally, I think it's going to stay in the same situation that it is right now. Michael Alban says Josh Allen, the new Tom Brady of fantasy. Take no one on that team but the QB. Exactly. And James Cook, but we talked last week about James Cook in the regression issue there. But for pass catchers, for sure, I just you don't want to touch them. And it'll get tempting, guys. It will get tempting because we're drafting appropriately and we're ranking appropriately. From what I can tell, we are not raising DJ Moore up to any kind of egregious ADP or anything. So they're going to be interesting mid-round wide receiver 3 picks, right? That's what DJ Moore would be. And depending on who the wide receiver is, probably like a wide receiver 4 kind of range, right? So we're not going to have to make a massive investment. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be consistent. I tried to think back to, and I don't feel like I had Khalil Shakir shares, but I think from a DFS perspective, Khalil Shakir was one that I tried to utilize last year because when he hit, the ceiling would be super high and he was very cost effective, right? But there was just no logical way to predict when he was going to have those ceiling games. So it's going to be the same situation. Very irritating. Very irritating. Let's turn to the Jets here. Michael Alban says, I'm running away from the Jets, maybe. Yeah. I love Breece Hall. I do have him further down in my list. If I'm looking apples to apples at running backs in that range, I'm gonna take a Travis Etienne, right? Just because I have seen, unfortunately, what happens to the running back position when it's a bad offensive line and Geno Smith at quarterback and questionable coaching, which is what they will have in New York. So no offense to Aaron Glenn, but from an offensive coordinator perspective, it will in fact be peculiar. So yeah, I don't feel inspired in any way, shape, or form. Garrett Wilson is a super high volume guy, but at the end of the day, it's a destitute situation. They're probably tanking for a quarterback and not a good scenario there, unfortunately. Michael also says won the league last year. I would have won my league last year if I didn't have Lamar, and I'm a Raiders fan. I had Lamar in my Scott Fishbowl league last year, and by the grace of God, and Mac Jones. No, it was the grace of Mac Jones. By the grace of Mac Jones, I did make it pretty deep into the playoffs, but that was a killer. It really was. It really was for sure. Just lift D1W, not to get too off of rookies, but Phil Maffa might be a great sleeper pick over Blue for the Cowboys. Over Blue for sure. I was never a Jaden Blue believer, unfortunately. I don't think that he has it. Just very small, lots of inconsistencies in terms of fumbles. It just didn't really ring as a 3-down back starter to me. And then Michael says, back in 92, Uncle Rico could throw the pigskin for over a quarter mile. Miles Logan says, I'm looking forward to Jonathan Brooks, Chuba at risk. Looking forward to Jonathan Brooks, Chuba at risk. I am too. And it feels weird. It feels weird, but I do think that Chuba is at risk. He'll be in that range of guys that I don't want anything to do with. What is his ranking right now? Let's take a quick look. Chuba is RB. Okay, he's moved back significantly. RB 31, but he is ranked as high as, and that might be some people not updating rankings maybe because he's ranked as high as RB 22, which is peculiar. And that's the highest ranking that he has of that little area where there's guys like Jalen Warren, Kalman Guy, Rico Dowdle, Ramondre Stevenson, Blake Corum. I'm skipping over Tony Pollard because of the whole Jeremiah Love thing. Blake Corum, Tyler Algier, and Chuba Hubbard is smack dab in the middle of that grouping. And he has a ranking as high as 22. That's a little egregious for me. That would be like taking him above guys like David Montgomery, Bashal Tutin, even RJ Harvey, Quinshon Judkins, and whatnot doesn't make logical sense. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan of Chuba, unfortunately, this year because of the risk of him struggling there. What is that? Glycerfan says Caleb Downs fits the Chiefs. The Chiefs are interesting for a couple of landing spots there. The one that I find the most interesting is that I feel like we've had again this weird. Well, we've had weird, very weird potential landing spot predictions of a tight end there for the future, which makes sense because obviously Travis Kelce, but I don't think that's going to happen with their first round pick, to be honest. But I have seen it mocked in a couple of places, but I don't see it happening. But Caleb Downs does make a lot of sense there as well. But I have also seen the potential for them to take a wide receiver there. I've seen Jordan Tyson mocked there. I can't remember whose mock draft it was, but I did see Jordan Tyson there, which is interesting. But I do think they'll go defense. But I do think that is low-key, just on a side note there. They are a sneaky wide receiver landing spot because I do think that they got a bad taste in their mouth of Xavier Worthy last year, where it was very clear that he is more of a third look in the option rather than somebody that they rely on. Oddly enough, JP Tay commented right after that, how about the Chiefs for a wide receiver? At this point, they need a legit guy, not these gadget guys like Worthy, Royals, Sky Moore. So you're literally right on the same path there with me mentally. JP Tay, same thing, right? Like Rasheed is fantastic. He's clearly wide receiver one. If he were a choir boy, there would be no problem, right? We'd be taking him top 5. But unfortunately, the off the field issues are a major issue and it makes him extremely risky. At that point, how can you rely on him long term if you're the Chiefs? And they're not going to get rid of him in any, they're not moving. Obviously, they've got no problem with problematic players. But how can you ultimately, long term with your future, feel super comfortable there, knowing that at any time he could do something quite silly? Right? Or dumb or illegal. So yeah, investing in a high-end wide receiver with that pick does make sense there. So ideally, defense probably fits their needs, but a wide receiver, high-end, especially one that can be more of the deeper, more consistent deep threat there, which again, all of these high-end wide receivers that they would have available at their pick do have that deep threat capabilities there that would play very well off of Rasheed. Like at this point, we know Rasheed's role is he is underneath, he is in the slot. That is what he does, right? They need somebody that can consistently win on the outside and is reliable and has a little bit of size to them, right? And none of those guys are those guys, right? And they've just been drafting very for what you say, you're not drafting the right players there. So there's been a lot of smoke about a wide receiver to them. I think it's a possibility there. Michael Alvin says the Seahawks had the best GM in the business. I agree. I mean, there's a lot of good candidates there, but I agree, right up there for sure. They're excellent at that. Just lift D1W with the super chat. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And then catching up on comments here, Ride Some Waves said Kenyon Sadiq to the Chiefs. It's been mocked a lot for sure. He's a weird one because the range of where he could go. And I don't feel I feel like last year we knew for sure that Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren were going top 15. Like if you were just looking at the teams, mocking out the picks, you knew they were off the board by then, 100%. But I don't feel that we have a very strong consensus on landing spots for Kenyon Sadiq and that it could potentially push out a little bit further there. So I feel like the Chiefs' position is a little bit rich for them to take Kenyon Sadiq, but it is I've seen it mocked a couple times, so it's a possibility there. Pass catcher, either way, for sure, is a possibility. Johansson says Seahawks will repeat Super Bowl win, third year. Also, with Milroe at quarterback, step up. Nice, very interesting prediction there. I will be interested to see if they can, because I don't know. We'll see if they can develop a quarterback because obviously that was one that they've, would need to develop, and I'm sure they have been working on that. Didn't really have to do that with Sam Darnold. He came in, developed, right? It was just put him behind a good offensive line and let him go to work. And then Seahawks are saying and then Ride Some Waves saying Seahawks going to get Dexter Lawrence. Maybe they're saying that they're making some progress on contract talks. So perhaps he was just throwing a fit to try and get them to give him some money. So that was the possibility there. Miles Logan says, where does Mekhi Lemon end up? I think it's Miami. There's been just so much smoke around that one. I think Miami ends up being the one, and I'm okay with either him or Jordan Tyson there. I got no issue with either one, love both, but it sounds like Miami is the route they want to go. And if they're feeling nostalgic for Jalen Waddle, that does make a lot of logical sense there. So, Mekhi Lemon but again, he very versatile, in terms of ability to play in the slot and on the outside there. So, considering they don't have any wide receivers, that might be the best route for them to go with someone who can really be more of a jack of all trades for them. So I think it is Miami that ends up being the spot there. Let's see here, catching up. And then we talked about Kenyon Sadiq there. Ride Some Waves says Kenyon Sadiq will be a top 5 tight end this year. It's funny because I got a little bit of flack for already having him higher than certain tight ends in my draft. Obviously, landing spot will dictate, but I felt more comfortable as the years have gone on with leaning into these rookie tight ends, these young tight ends in particular as well, because it hasn't just been the rookie ones, like young guys that were coming into prominent roles. Like I was, in on Tucker Kraft when he was coming into a prominent role. I would rather lean into youth than sit there drafting guys that are the third look on their team at best. Like I would rather make my investment into a Kenyon Sadiq than draft a Dalton Schultz, right? Or a Jake Ferguson, right? Playing behind both CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, right? Because he needs one not to be there in order to be putting out top fantasy numbers there. So I like leaning into the youth there. I do, for sure. So I agree with you on that one and the potential. And then, Aubin says AJ Brown might get traded after June. Let's see here. Josh Allen, comment there from Just Lift DW. Josh Allen scares me with those run plays. I'll give him one thing. Durability has been there for sure, aside from that, little shoulder thing. Michael Alvin says the Browns going to draft a left tackle in the first round. Judkins might be sneaky good. They got to, upgrade that offensive line for sure. As long as they do that, if they do that, I would feel good about that for sure. But again, even with the subpar offensive line, he was good last season. I just got to see proof that he is okay. Right on proof that he is okay in terms of the recovery there. That's my only thing, is that I just want to see him out there on the field working out during OTAs to get that validation that he is on track and good to go. Otherwise, we got to start looking at, are we kind of trying to supplement with the Dylan Sampson at the beginning of the season or whatnot? So it'll be interesting, right? Michael Albin says deep threat doesn't mean much if they can't separate. That is true. Shout out to Who Hams in the chat. Question from Miles Logan. Do you think Garrett Wilson is draftable, especially with the addition of Geno Smith, tossing it to him? I've seen a lot of Geno Smith defenders, which is interesting. And saying that he, last year was, because you could make the argument that last year was not his fault. Obviously, everyone and their mother because I think about the Raiders report cards and saying that, the complaints that came out about Pete Carroll, his son that was on the staff, and just everything, and just obviously the offensive coordinator was terrible. Maybe Geno's problems were more so that the Raiders were terrible. The offensive line was bad and, lack of weapons, or you can make the argument, but problem with that is that the Jets is not a better situation really, because they're just rebuilding everything, right? So I do still think that Garrett Wilson is draftable based off pure volume, but if they do end up adding a secondary receiver, that's where I get a little bit nervous that the volume might not be there. That's my only issue. But yeah, he's still projected to do those wide receiver 2 numbers, and he's a volume guy, right? He's a volume guy. So he's not a complete fade for me, but it has to be at the right price, and I don't feel very good about it, right? Huabe says Sadiq feels like a follower at this point. I think that might be the case too. I think we could see him like I don't feel the same way as I did about the other guys. I think we could see it push into the 20s potentially there for sure. And it could end up being to a team that we 100% did not even see on the radar, right? Michael Albin says, who is the Trey Harris of the draft? That's who the Chiefs should draft. That is true. Because Trey Harrison himself is actually very interesting because we don't know if Keenan Allen is not in contract, but theoretically they could bring him back at this point. I think Keenan probably just wants to be in California. I think that stop off in Chicago was a nightmare for him, and he just wants to be out there in California. So they could potentially work something out and bring him back there. But just side note there, Trey Harris is a very interesting option there to see if he can be that third option in the offense there. Let's see here. Oh, so who would the Chiefs? Oh, that's who the Chiefs should draft. So who's the Trey Harris of this draft? I think theoretically, maybe the Trey Harris of this draft is KC Concepcion. But not. Yeah, I think that might be theoretically who would make sense for them. Michael Albin says, I picked up Trey McBride and Puka Nacua off waivers in our league. I don't have a deep bench. Always diamonds in the rough. JP Tay says, let's wrap up these comments. Oh, we're at the end of the comments. Perfect. JP Tay says, who do you think reaches on Ty Simpson? I don't see the talent myself, but late day 1 pick or early day 2 would be the guess there. Yeah, it's funny because he's going to the draft, which I found peculiar. And I kind of do think that it's going to end up being a day 2 situation. But if he's going to the draft, because, Will Levis went to the draft and ended up being day 2. So I don't know. But if he's going to the draft, perhaps his agents are telling him that there's a good chance that he will be, someone's going to trade up into the second and get him. I got the feeling that it will end up being the Jets. I do think it's going to be the Jets that gets him. And they can, and again, there's multiple, it doesn't have to be late round 1. The only advantage to that would be someone trading up and ensuring they get him, because all of those early round 2 pick teams are going to be teams that need the quarterback, right? So it could be Arizona. It could, for all we know, maybe Cleveland adds him, and then the Jets as well. But I think it's going to be the Jets there for sure. For sure. That is my thought process on that one. But that wraps things up, guys. I appreciate you all tuning in here. Thank you so much. Again, we will have our live show next week at 8 p.m. EST on Wednesday. That'll be our last minute draft talk. Hopefully we'll have some good fresh rumors and very clear landing spots to talk about that. And then obviously we will have our draft. I think I had questions last week. Will I be going live for the draft? I will not be going live for the draft, but I will immediately have recap videos posted to my YouTube channel the day after for sure. 100% promise you on that one. But outside of that, I appreciate you all tuning in, and we will talk next week. We are 1 week away from the draft, so exciting. And again, this is the Dear Miss Fantasy podcast. It is available on all platforms, all social media platforms, and all podcast platforms as well. So if you could drop a subscription to that, that is much appreciated, and a subscription to my YouTube channel as well, and to Player Profiler, who this podcast is through. Thank you so much. I will talk to you all again next week. Enjoy these NBA playoffs. I'm off to go watch those, and have a wonderful end to the week, guys. Talk to you later.